Robert Fanny Willis, Phil Holloway, by the way, who was on a week ago from Friday, started a YouTube channel. He picked up 12,000 subs in 24 hours. His first live stream. I mean, I just hope he's not. It's not all going to be this easy, and it's not all going to be these numbers. But he's got 250,000 views on a 38-minute stream. He's fantastic. He's funny. He's smart. He knows his stuff. But we've been going back and forth all week. There have been people now challenging Fanny Willis in her re-election for district attorney. Scott McAfee in his re-election or his election for judge for a 4-year term. Who's the guy? Jesse Jackson activist running against Scott McAfee. Question is whether or not that's going to be helpful or prejudicial to him rendering a disqualification. I'll stop there. Robert, do you think a Jesse Jackson activist who worked with whatever the Rainbow Coalition running against Scott McAfee is going to make it more likely or less likely he issues a disqualification ruling?
I think they made a mistake with the timing. Because now if the goal was we're putting in this challenger, but if you rule the way we want you for Fanny in favor of Fanny, that challenger will belatedly withdraw or not campaign. Then he looks to be as crooked as Fanny Willis. So as Big Fanny, that's the problem. They didn't play this right, but because they're such nitwit crooks, they're just like Joe Biden himself. I always say he's Lyndon Baines Johnson, mentally slower little brother. Some other phrases I use, but I'm told they're politically incorrect. So but that's who Fanny is. And I have no doubt that that's the quid pro quo they're trying to put out there. But if you're the judge, you have to know that. And you have no guarantee that they actually step down anyway. And maybe they defeat you anyway because they're those kind of people. They'll betray anybody. So it's lose-lose if you go with them. Whereas by contrast, if you rule against her now, it looks like it's entirely a legal decision, not a political decision, because by so doing, you've guaranteed aggressive opposition that's now on the ballot. So all they did is force him into a situation where either he can look like a crook for no gain, or he can look like a courageous, conscientious person for at least some gain. And so I think they misplayed the politics because they think so short term. That's like people say criminals are stupid. Look at the IQ and the intellectual test of criminals. I'm like, yeah, convicted criminals. The ones that are not convicted, not in prison, you aren't testing them. But if you study the reason that is convicted criminals are one-step thinkers. They look there and say, I'd like to steal that purse. They don't think, how do I get away with it? The second step isn't there. And it's clear Fanny is a one-step criminal. So he's thinking, okay, how do I intimidate him? Oh, here's how. Not what's the second step of how that all works. And so I think Megyn Kelly was concerned. I disagree. I think, though I was glad Megyn Kelly said what she said, because it's putting the judge on notice. By the way, this is how this will be interpreted if, in fact, you rule in favor of Fanny Willis now. But it's precisely because of that I think now he's got no choice but to do his job. Hold his oath.
I'm glad
facts of the law are clear. Big Fanny is guilty, guilty, guilty.
I feel smarter whenever I think of something or say something and then you affirm it when I didn't know that that's what you were going to do. And it's a good point. If he does not disqualify her now, there's no benefit, because if they're going to vote based on race and politics, they're voting for that guy anyhow. I forget his name. And it's like you say, do the right thing for political risk. Makes him look virtuous and courageous. All right. Well, we're going to see. Apparently he's issuing the decision by next week. Jeff Clark put out one hell of a beautiful argument brief in response to the state's argument brief. Robert, no one's going to take it from a former Canadian litigator, schnook. When they come out and say it's not the appearance of conflict that's the legal question, it's an actual conflict of interest that's pecuniary in nature, resulting from a conviction of the prosecution. I sit there as a former Quebec attorney say, you have to be an idiot to think this makes any sense. It's as idiotic as I think it is, correct?
Absolutely, because the law is the same in that regard in the US and in Canada and the UK. It's confidence in the judicial system. The judicial system exists to get people to settle their disputes rather than doing it the old East Tennessee way, gouging out your eye and remembering to kill your kid when they grow up. Vengeance. My kid's going to kill your kid. Then my grandkid's going to kill your grandkid, and so forth. That didn't always work out so well. I'd say sometimes it works just fine, but officially doesn't work out that well. So consequently, we have a judicial system, but that only works if people have confidence in it. They only have confidence in it if it has their belief in its impartiality. What's that about? the appearance of impartiality. And you cannot have the appearance of pecuniary gain. You cannot have you can have the appearance of partiality creating prejudice. And you sure can't have at least the appearance of people committing routine, regular criminal perjury and obstruction of justice, presiding over a case concerning alleged obstruction of election proceedings and fraud. You can't have fraudsters prosecuting people in the name of fraud. So factually, legally, constitutionally, professionally, politically, the only choice is to disqualify them. The question is whether this guy is as dumb and corrupt as Big Fanny is.
I don't think he is. I'm sticking to it. That's the latest, I believe, there.
And of course, more facts keep coming out. You lied about this, lied about that. Somebody else heard of her trying to intimidate this person.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. It was brought out in Jeff Clark's reply. I had forgotten about, you're interfering with a criminal prosecution, her threats against Nathan Wade's wife in the context of the divorce, to say, don't subpoena me, don't bother me. This is, obstruction, interference with a criminal prosecution, threatening her with criminality. I mean, it's wild. Jeff Clark obviously has some attorneys who are as well prepared and intelligent as him. The judge says he's going to come out.
Never should have indicted him. What an idiot! I mean, she even like one of the key guys whose lawyers brought this motion. Someone pointed out to me, it was Julie Kelly. He's an opposition researcher. That's his professional job. It's like, how dumb do you have to be to sue an opposition researcher when you have skeletons in your closet?
And what was it? So Ashley Merchant had mentioned this, but Michael Roman wasn't even one of the defendants that the special purpose grand jury recommended to indict. They throw him in there. He's a senior, what do they call them? Campaign advisor. I mean, they were doing it to send a message like, don't work with Trump. And then this is what it produces.
That's exactly right. So
wild.
So Big Fanny's in big trouble. And if we're going to have any confidence in our judicial system, that judge will disqualify them. Just like if we have any confidence in our judicial system, or are going to, the Supreme Court will grant the president immunity. And we probably got a preview of that in the majority of the election decision.
So and I'll just say one thing first. I got a DM in Twitter saying there's a bombshell about the Trump Raffensperger call that was recorded that served as the basis.
Robert, gotta get his name right. Ratner.
Now people are questioning whether or not that call was illegally taped by Fanny. Robert,
it was illegally taped.
I know now it's coming back. We talked about that at the time. Oh my goodness!
Remember, it's settlement conversations, so it's never supposed to be taped or publicly released in the first place.
Holy cow! So the person who sent me the link
after breach, illegality after illegality after, and of course, it also came out that Mrs. I've never, as you have explained on Twitter, all right, now called X. She said emphatically she rarely ever goes to Washington D.C. Hadn't been anywhere near anybody at the White House or the White House, and it turns out, she just happened to hang out with Kamala Harris at the White House.
Robert, and I've been having arguments to see whether or not I'm defensive as to whether or not my assessment was that a lie. I didn't go to the White House, but I went to the vice president's residence.
If it looks like perjury, talks like perjury, walks like perjury, it's perjury.
It might just be perjury. So now the person who sent me that message, I don't know if they're watching right now. I'm an idiot. I remember we talked about that illegal recording of settlement conference discussions and then leaking it to get him in trouble. Okay, I'll do an update on that tomorrow.